Hi everyone, welcome to the channel and welcome to my review of the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. I've owned this vehicle for about 2 months now, and I just wanted to share my honest feedback on the car and kind of what I like, what I dislike about it, specifically coming from somebody who's owned BMWs most of his life. And of those BMWs, 3 of them were M cars. My first M3 was E36 M3. It was a Dakar yellow, inspired by the Dado's M3 from the DTMpower.net videos. Those of you who know, you know. You're probably a little bit older like me. I ended up keeping that for a while. Ended up supercharging it as well at one point. So it was a fun car. The next kind of fun M car was an E92 M3. Had a few small mods on it, took it to the track. Amazing engine, amazing sounding engine. Chassis was a little bit soft, so it wasn't like, I guess, my favorite car. Then the last M car I've owned was a G80 M3. I built it to spec, and it was a manual. I had a few tasteful mods, driving mods like monoballs, springs, some CS software, things like that. So it was also a fun car, definitely very quick, but it did not scratch that itch. I was always curious about this car, but I was put off by the automatic transmission, as I was a diehard manual guy, and really wanted to stick to a manual in my sports cars, or sports sedans, I should say. But having owned the G80 M3 and kind of have dealt with BMW's not so great manual transmissions, I was kind of ready for something different. So I've, again, heard great things about these cars. Went and test drove one, and then ended up finding this particular one. So this particular car, it's a 2017 late model Quadrifoglio, finished in Silverstone metallic, basically bone stock, aside from new wheels and tires. So I did upgrade to these BBS RAA wheels. I was able to find a fantastic deal for these wheels, and it came with tires too. So couldn't pass up on that. They're essentially the same spec as if you're familiar with the Apex VS5 RS wheels. It's the same spec of wheel, size-wise and offset-wise. They are 1 inch wider in the front and 1/2 inch wider in the rear. So the tires are the same in the rear, 285s, but the fronts are 255s versus the 245 width on factory. So basically this car is stock aside from the lighter wheels. They are significantly lighter. The rear is about 10 pounds lighter per wheel, and the front's 7 pounds lighter. So there is that difference, but otherwise, you know, and the tires are a little bit wider by 10 millimeters in the front. So otherwise the car is stock aside from like the lighter wheels and the a little bit wider front tires. So the experience is basically of a stock Quadrifoglio here. So the goal of this video is just to go over some of the things I really like about it and some of my gripes with it in my ownership, in my 2 months ownership of this car. So let's get started. All right, so one of my favorite things about the Quadrifoglio is its dual personality. This car is a true Jekyll and Hyde machine. It is comfortable if you want it to be. You can just leave it in the N mode or D mode or even the A mode, which is a little bit lethargic, if you will. I guess for those who are not familiar, it has four modes. So it has advanced efficiency, natural, I believe, or neutral, probably natural, dynamic, and then race. So normally I drive it in N mode for kind of everyday back and forth, grocery getting, going to the office, things like that. For kind of more spirited highway driving, I put it into D, which is dynamic. It does kind of pep things up a little bit, opens up the exhaust valves a little bit, and makes the throttle response a little bit more aggressive. Now the race mode, it is a completely different animal. It feels like when you're going from a natural mode to race mode, it feels like you're literally hopping into a different car. I mean, I might be over dramatizing things a little bit here, but it is very different. It immediately changes the character of the car completely. I mean, let's start with the sound. It opens up the baffles and exhaust, which is very quiet, by the way, from the factory. I've test driven a regular Giulia, and on the startup, it's pretty much the same sound. There's like no difference when you start up a Giulia, at least from what I recall, and the Quadrifoglio. They're super quiet. Now, if you start in race mode, that's a different story. So going between the natural mode and the race mode, it is truly like two different personalities in the car. It feels like you're getting an extra 100-150 horsepower from, you know, hopping in from those, moving between those two modes. The sound is dramatically increased. You're getting pops and bangs all over the place. The throttle response is immediate, and there's zero turbo lag. I mean, this thing, it just pulls like a freight train. It goes from, you know, the RPM is like, it revs through the entire rev range in every gear, I think, in race mode. I mean, it really changes the character of the car. Like, you're no longer in this like chill Italian luxurious sedan. Like, you are like ripping around. Like, this thing is, it's exciting to drive. It's fun to drive in the race mode. Like, it immediately changes the character of the car. Not to mention the traction control. For example, in the BMW world, you have traction on, you have traction off, and then you have MDM, which is M dynamic mode. Stands for M dynamic mode, excuse me, which is kind of halfway house. It lets you slide the car a little bit, but then it catches you. It never lets you, won't let you hit the tree, if you will. With this car, it's basically on or off. Some people say that the off is not fully off. I don't know about that. I mean, I've had an experience where I accidentally gave it a little too much power in the turn, and I mean, this thing just like threw me out. It really, like, traction control is either on or off. There is no halfway house. So if it's wet, snowy, or you have bad tires, whatever it is, just be ready for it to come out, to step out on you in race mode. It could be fun if you know what you're doing. I don't encourage drifting on the streets, but I can say that I don't like to have a little fun myself sometimes. Again, with this car, I'm still not too comfortable with it, as with that was one of my favorite things about the M cars, where you can really just have a lot of fun with the car, knowing that the car will save you when you're sliding. With this car, I'm not really sure. I don't have a whole lot of experience sliding this thing around. Maybe when I get more comfortable with it, I'll be able to tell you more. But anyways, on to the next point that I really like about this car, and it is the steering. The steering is light, unassisted, natural feeling, and really, really quick. Pretty much all of those are positives. I can't see any of those being a negative. It doesn't have that weight and the additional artificial weight that the BMW steering adds when you're driving in different Sport Plus modes. When you're going between those modes, you are always, at least my experience, I could never find the right mode. Comfort was kind of always the best one in the BMW world. That would adds that I could actually feel a little bit of feedback from the car as it would load up in turns. But here, there's none of that. There is only one steering mode. You can't change it. You cannot change it. It's always light, direct, and quick. Now, would I want more steering feedback? For sure. And there are some things I might do to address that in the future with some suspension tweaks. But for now, it's a great starting point. It really helps you feel more connected to the car, in the sense where when you make an adjustment, like, it's there, it's immediate. It doesn't feel like you're playing an arcade at the movie theater on one of those arcade machines where you turn the wheel and there's this weird assisted steering, and you don't really know, like, you have to compute and calculate and factor in what type of artificial heft or weight will be added to the steering input this time for me to enjoy the kind of taking the corner or turning. So definitely a plus, and I really enjoy the steering in this car. It makes the driving experience so much more enjoyable, and honestly it feels like a breath of fresh air coming from other EPS racks. So on to the next point that I really love about this car. It is the size. And what I mean by that is not just the sheer dimensions of the car, but how the car feels when you're throwing it around, when you're taking sharp turns, when you're just spirited driving. It just feels nimble. It doesn't feel heavy, and it doesn't feel big. Most importantly, big. It does not feel big. Like, I cannot stress this enough. I feel like any M3 chassis, starting from the F80 going on to the G80, they started all feeling really big, especially the G80. I mean, that car felt giant for somebody, you know, hopping in from even an F80. It felt like it grew in size, and F80 was already felt like a bigger car. It almost feels like the difference between an M3 and an M2. In the sense that you just don't have that, it's easier to place this car. Like driving in the canyons in the G80 M3, I was always struggling to place the car in the lane because of its sheer size. Where with this car, yes, it's not a tiny car. It's not a Miata or a BRZ or I don't know, even honestly an M2. This is a bigger car than an M2, but it doesn't feel big. That bigness never gets in the way of you enjoying the driving experience. Like, it just feels nimble, like it rotates around its axis way easier than any other sedan I've driven, pretty much, unless we're talking about like one of those compact A3s, S3s. Those cars feel kind of similar to this, or a 4-door 2 Series. This car feels compact, and paired with the fast steering, it really creates an engaging and enjoyable driving experience where you're not fighting its size, its weight, and the unpredictable steering input. So, huge plus. Love the size, love the steering feedback, and love its dual personality. I love the steering directness and lightness and the unassisted nature of it. I don't love the steering feedback. I'm hoping I would be able to address that in the future. There's not a whole lot of feedback. There is some load up in the turns, but it's not brimming with feedback. Let's not kid ourselves here. It is still an electric rack, and unfortunately, it's lacking in the feedback department. But every other way, the steering is fantastic. All right, so that's what I have for the positives. Now let's move on to some of the things that I'm not fond of in this car. And one of the first things that I found out the hard way a few times is this panic button on the key fob. It is super easy to press this thing, and when you do press it, it starts sounding the horn and activates the alarm on the car. And this happens in the most inconvenient times, at least for me it has. And one of those being early in the morning when I'm getting ready to go to the office, when everybody's still sleeping, and I accidentally press this button and wake up the entire house. Not a fan. So if anyone knows how to address this, I know there's probably these little cases for the key fob that I can throw this in, and it will prevent the button from being pressed. That might be something I need to work on, but it happened a few times already. So definitely not a fan of this. Never had this issue with any other cars I've owned, and I'm sure they've had their own version of a panic button in the BMWs, but I'm not a fan of this Alfa. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. It's something that I've never seen in anybody else mentioned in any review, so I just wanted to mention that. So that's the key fob situation. Another thing that I'm not of is the suspension on this car. Now, I know it's adaptive and it has all these modes, and some of them do feel good, like they feel nice and firm. Not specifically that they're firm, but the change in the firmness is welcome, especially when going in between like natural and race mode. You really feel the car tighten up, kind of gives you a sensation that you're driving something special, and definitely connects you more to the road, right? Because it's firmer, so there's more information coming through. Less of it is being kind of softened for you. So I like that. However, this car specifically came with 20, so this is a late 17 model, which means it came with a 2018 model year springs. And those springs are 1 inch higher than any other, taller, I should say, than any other year of this car. Roughly, right? 2019, they went a little bit halfway, they lowered. So it's not exactly an inch, but on average, it's about an inch taller, which is not great in the aesthetic department. It definitely creates an additional like wheel gap, which I know it's not a big deal, but it is. You know, this car is beautiful. It has amazing lines. Like, it's a beautiful Italian car, designed by, I believe, the people who designed Ferrari. I'm not gonna, don't quote me on that, but I believe it is. You know, the looks are important. Let's just put it this way for this car, right? And adding an additional inch of wheel gap for no reason absolutely whatsoever, because the 2017 one didn't have that. I'm not a fan of that. It kind of bugs me. So I'm gonna address that eventually with some springs and some other things, other changes in the suspension that I will create a different video for in the future. But not a fan of the springs from the aesthetics department, and also they are a little bouncy, and not even a little. They're pretty bouncy. So they're tall. There's a little bit of body roll, and there's bounciness. So just not a great spring, and I would love to address that and change that spring at some point in the future. So I'm going to work on that as well. So let's see. So that's two, and then the third thing I'm not a fan of, I mean, and this is kind of a given, because this is a 500 plus horsepower Italian super sedan, is the fuel economy. Fuel economy is not great. I mean, I'm getting about 14 miles to the gallon driving it in natural mode. Okay, I rarely put it in race mode, but when I do, I don't even check the MPGs. I'm sure it's like below 10. But yeah, 14 miles per gallon is not great if that's something you care about. Now, I know you're not buying this car for fuel economy, and if you are, then you might want to just get a regular Giulia. If you care about a fuel economy and you want to save money, definitely don't buy this car because it is thirsty. And I've had an E92 M3, so I've had a car that's eats a lot of gas, but this thing is just like, you wouldn't expect it driving around in natural mode, because it's really not anything crazy in natural mode. It feels like a normal Giulia almost, but it does drink a lot of gas. So just keep that in mind, guys, when you're buying this car. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. So those are the three things I like, three things I'm not a fan of, and I have a lot of plans for this car. So stay tuned for future videos on mods, other reviews, and as well as maybe track day at some point in 2026. Thanks for viewing, and I hope you have an awesome day. Bye.